I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's break down the elections in Canada. And, okay, Justin Trudeau has won, but he'll be governing via a minority. He got 157 seats, 14 short of having a majority government. Let me give you the breakdown, Alexander, and then I would like you to comment big picture as to how you see the results of the election. 157 for the Liberal Party, 24 for the New Democrats, 32 for the Bloc Québécois, 3 for the Green, 1 for Other, and 121 for the Conservative Party, 0 for the People's Party, which is the, I guess you would brand it as the nation state kind of party, the right nation state party. So Alexander, big picture, how do you see the results?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it's the deflation of the Justin Trudeau bubble. I mean, if you remember how the popularity he had when he became Prime Minister of Canada 4 years ago, that's massively receded. He's been weighed down by scandals. He's been proved to be not what he pretended, this great liberal virtue signaling champion. It turned out that this was really not actually very substantial. But there's two other points to make, and here I'm going to say that I, to some extent, am basing what I'm saying on a very, very interesting email we got from a Canadian voter. I'll call him Dylan, who provided us with a lot of information about the Canadian election. It seems that Justin Trudeau's Liberals actually lost the popular vote. They may have got 33%, whereas the Conservatives got 34.5%. But what's perhaps even more interesting is that Canada has split, so that there is now a rural West, in fact, and the rural West has voted overwhelmingly for the Conservatives. And apart from Quebec, which went for the party Québécois, which is a nationalist party, the Liberals are clinging on to Atlantic Canada, the Atlantic seaboard, and a few places like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. So it's becoming again the urban-rural split, if you like. It's also becoming, the major heartland is swinging behind the Conservatives, and the Liberals are becoming increasingly a party of what you might call metropolitan Canada, the kind of Canada that has become very integrated in the global economy, and which is in fact a beneficiary, if you wish, of the globalization tendencies that we have seen over the last 30 or so years. So what this reflects the same pattern that we saw in 2016 during the American election, when, as I said, the heartland, the flyover states massively voted for Donald Trump, and the Democrats clung on to the Atlantic and Pacific seaboards. So there's a sort of split there. It's turning into something like very much the kind of split you saw in Britain during the Brexit referendum, where London, which is the sort of equivalent of metropolitan Canada and the American coastline states, voted for Remain, but the rest of England, once again the heartland, voted Leave. So this is now becoming, I think, an established pattern, at least in the English-speaking world, that the heartland regions are becoming more conservative, they're becoming more disaffected with the globalist economy, and they are becoming increasingly critical of it and are voting increasingly solidly against it, whereas the parties that support globalization, that support, if you like, integration into the globalist economy, are continuing to vote in a different way for more liberal parties. And they have also bought very heavily and indeed even passionately into the liberal or ultra-liberal social policies that we have been seeing up to now. So they're the places where the immigration goes to, where there's all these which are driving the changes in sort of sexual politics or gender politics. So we're seeing, it seems to me, at least in the English-speaking world, that split is now becoming ever more profound. So my major take, Canada is now itself very much part of these tendencies. And Justin Trudeau, having been very, very deflated, he will remain Prime Minister of Canada for a while, but I don't think for very much longer. I think even the Liberals in Canada realize that he's damaged goods.
Yeah, he's victorious, but definitely weakened. Alexander, I think you're right there.
I think not just weakened. I think largely discredited.
Right.
I think the Liberals had to cling to him in this election because he is their leader and he's their prime minister. But at the end of the day, I don't think he was why the Liberals won in the places that they did. I think they won in the places that they did because, as I said, this split, which is increasingly growing across the Western world, or at least the English part of the Western world.
Right. Let me read you a quote going off of that. And we have a lot to discuss here. Especially,
yes.
I also want to focus in on the geopolitical implications of a Trudeau win. But let's start with a quote here from Daryl Bricker, who's the president of the Ipsos Public Affairs and Polling Firm. This is a great quote. And I want you to comment on this. Trudeau has become just another politician, and a flawed one at that.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, not just another politician, but very, very definitely a flawed one, because, of course, he represented himself as something completely new in politics. And it turns out that, in fact, he's scheming, he's duplicitous, he's manipulative. He's not what he pretended to be. I have to say, I have a tremendous sense of déjà vu when it comes to Trudeau. The person he so reminds me of is Tony Blair. Tony Blair also came into British politics in the 1970s as this, great change. He was going to be this pure. I remember him talking about how he would be whiter than white. And he wouldn't have used that phrase today, by the way, but he meant by that he would be, non-corrupt. He would pursue virtuous politics. And he represented himself as this very straight guy. He actually said that. And of course, it turned out that he was, in fact, not just none of those things, but he was warmongering. He was involved in soliciting loans from rich people to his Labour Party, and apparently, or so it was alleged, giving out honours to these people in order to get those loans so that Labour could go on to fight elections. He became extremely rich. He's now a multimillionaire with a very large property empire. And of course, he was the sponsor of all these great wars that happened in Yugoslavia, in Iraq, and all those things. And of course, many people in Britain today refer to him not as Blair, but as Blair. In other words, B. Liar. So, there's this extraordinary shift in attitudes towards Blair that happened. And it seems to me something like the same thing is happening with Trudeau in Canada, that he's been found out. Many people in Canada have seen through him, but they're not prepared yet to vote for the Conservatives because we now see this big regional split. And that is what is determining the way votes happen.
Yeah, I think the regional split is dead obvious. I mean, in the prairie provinces, I'm looking at the numbers right now, the prairie provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Liberals picked up no seats. In Ontario and Quebec, Alexander, they picked up a combined 114 seats. I mean, that alone pretty much propelled them to victory.
Yes.
And so, SNC-Lavalin,
a very qualified victory. Absolutely. Carry on.
Yeah. So you mentioned scandals, SNC-Lavalin, huge scandal. And that is a real scandal there. Yeah. No doubt about it. You have, of course, on a social issue, you have the blackface controversy with Trudeau multiple times. wearing blackface in the past. Is it safe to say, though, Alexander, that it seems that the heavily populated areas didn't really care, while a lot of the prairie provinces and the less heavily populated areas seem to care? So this is not only a political split, it's a values split as well, is it not?
Oh, it's a profound value split. I mean, not only do these places that voted for the Liberals clearly not care, or at least not care very much, but frankly, I get the impression that with some people, and this isn't just true in Canada, but also in places like, Britain, like London, for example, provided you maintain the appearance of supporting these so-called new values, if you like, you will be forgiven everything, even if in reality you're exposed as a hypocrite. I mean, I should make a point going back to Tony Blair. I mean, Tony Blair had been largely found out by large chunks of the British electorate as early as the second election that he fought, which is, I think, in 2001. In that election, 2000. In that election, 2000. No, it wasn't 2001. In that election, there was a big fall in the Labour vote, but he still won because people still preferred him to the Conservative alternative, even though they knew that he wasn't what he pretended to be. And that, of course, continued in the 2005 election, which happened, of course, after the Iraq War, when it became very clear that, in fact, he'd lied, or rather, maybe not lied, but not told the truth about the start of the Iraq War, and the Iraq War had turned out to be a complete disaster. Many, many people still preferred Tony Blair, despite knowing that he was, a manipulative, that what he said was untrue, that he was, to a great extent, well, if not corrupt personally, at least out to enrich himself and engaging in practices which I would call corrupt and which many people in former times would have called corrupt. But nonetheless, it didn't matter. For lots of people, it didn't matter because he still embodied the kind of virtue, if you like, that they still wanted to see. And you see something very similar with Justin Trudeau in Canada. You see something very similar with Hillary Clinton in the United States. I mean, Hillary Clinton is also, let's be quite blunt about this, a person. We all know about the Clinton Foundation, and you pay into it and you get favors out. Exactly. Sorry. Well, indeed, exactly.
Yeah, pay for access. Yeah.
Pay for access, exactly. You get all of that sort of thing, and I mean, there's been all kinds of history with the Clintons, and yet lots and lots of people in the United States still voted for her. They obviously didn't really ultimately care about any of those things, because in the end, she still embodied the type of values, if you like, that they now prefer to see. And more conservative places where people care a lot about, care an awful lot about things like probity and honesty and things of that kind. Obviously, they were not going to vote for Clinton, for Blair, for Trudeau. They care a lot about these things, but at the end of the day, they're not enough of them to defeat this globalist, elitist, if you like, new values agenda, at least not initially. I think in the end, the tipping point will come. I'm going to just add, by the way, I think France, you see something of the same pattern in France, where France Profonde is opposed to Macron, and France Profonde is where the Gilets jaunes come from. But Paris and these big urban centres support Macron. And so you see something of the same pattern of politics there.
Yeah, this is definitely the pattern. I think you're exactly right there. Yeah. You see it, like you said, in France, you see it in the UK, you see it in the US, And now it's revealed itself in Canada as well. So this is the pattern,
Yes.
without a doubt. Trudeau was, in my opinion, the last of the Obama neoliberal rat pack.
Yes.
And you know, you had Trudeau, Renzi, Hollande, Cameron, Merkel. Now, I know Cameron. I know that Merkel is still there, but she said unequivocally that she's on her way out. She's also been greatly weakened. And so here you have Trudeau, actually the last of the Obama era rat pack,
Yes.
actually winning again.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
Well, as I said, it does show the continued resilience of the so-called of the kind of Obama type politics that was so strong previously.
And Obama endorsed Trudeau very publicly as well. Just on a side note. So
absolutely,
while he doesn't endorse Biden, his vice president, he came out and endorsed Trudeau.
Exactly. So clearly, that style of politics still has traction. But it's important to stress again, Trudeau seems to have lost the popular vote, and he lost huge areas of Canada. It's a very qualified victory. And I don't really think that he's going to remain Prime Minister of Canada for very long, because I think the Liberals understand that if they're going to consolidate that position and try to win back support in, if you like, the Canadian heartland, they will have to find another leader at some point, because he is now such heavily damaged goods. So, one mustn't, I think, overstress the importance of Trudeau's win. In effect, what's even more interesting is how, despite this resilience of this type of politics, he still managed to lose. So I'm guessing that, he's, as you correctly said, the last member of Obama's rat pack. And I don't think we're going to be seeing him around for very long. Germany, by the way, has a different kind of politics. If you go to Germany, politics there works in a completely different way. We haven't yet seen this a split that we've been talking about, because the CDU and SPD, who are the dominant parties in the coalition, have a different style of politics from the ones we've seen in the English-speaking world and in France. But of course, one can perhaps start to get a sense that something like that might come in Germany also, with the rise of the AfD, the continued existence of the Linkspartei, in part, which is a much more left-wing, old-fashioned left-wing party, and with the CDU, SPD are sort of melding into each other. But it's still behind in all of this, and of course I think Merkel is also going to.
Yeah, let's go from the other side now, the conservative right side of things, to close out the video, Alexander.
Yes.
I mean, you mentioned AfD. We see in the UK, we see parties like UKIP and the Brexit Party. Even in the United States, you have someone like Trump. So you do have these movements where you have a popular nation statist, someone that believes in, making America great again.
Yes.
These types of worldviews, very much looking within.
Yes.
In Canada, it seems that looking at these election results, you may have a different dynamic. I don't know if it's worrying or not, because you have a party like the Bloc Québécois, which did very well. But they obviously have a different type of nation statism with Quebec in mind. And then on the other side, you have the People's Party, which really was, I would say, modeled after something like, the AfD, for example, which didn't do well at all. Actually, it picked up no seats. What does that tell you as to the movements that are traditionally more conservative right in Canada?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the great problems they have in places like Canada, in places like Britain also, by the way, which is, remember that UKIP and the Brexit Party have also struggled to pick up seats in parliamentary elections, is that they face a Conservative Party which is dominant in right-wing areas, and which is very, very heavily favoured by the nature of the electoral system, which in Britain and Canada, really works very strongly against such parties. Germany, which has a proportional representation system, it's much easier for parties like the AfD to pick up votes and to get representation than it is in Britain. So that's the problem they are running into. There is, if you like, what some people call if we're talking about the Trudeau, Blair, Obama type of politics, I've seen it referred to as the militant center, because to be very clear, it's very hostile, extremely hostile to the old socialist type of left-wing politics that you used to see in Europe, and which are very different, by the way, from those of people like Ocasio-Cortez and that sort of person. I mean, they're basically focused on quite different issues, and at the same time, you have a right of centre bloc, and that is pushing, what you might call the real right and the real left out into the margins. That's the kind of politics we have at the moment.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And please donate to the Duran. You will find us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribe Star. The links are in the description box down below as well. And also don't forget, you can get an audio copy of this video. So follow us on iTunes and SoundCloud. You will find our channel links also in the description box. And also in the description box, we have the link to our Duran shop, where you can pick up magic mugs and magic t-shirts like the ones that Alexander is holding up right there or wearing.
Absolutely. I mean, these are our famous magic mugs, which refresh us and give us vigor and strength and analytical power, so that we can actually provide you with these videos that we've just done, these analytical videos in which we look at elections and are able to explain to you what is going on. 15 ounces, beautiful porcelain, really elegant to hold. They don't chip, they're really strong, and at the same time they're light, which is a sign of a really good porcelain body, by the way. And with these lovely, beautiful emblems. This is that of the Russian Federation. This is the one of Moscow, with St. George slaying the dragon of lies, untruth, falsehood, and fake news, which is what we seek to do here on the Duran. So these are marvelous mugs, and we got these fantastic, amazing shirts also, 100% cotton, made from made by a really good company, ethical company, and with our own Duran double-headed eagle there, which is, by the way, different from the Russian double-headed eagles that you see on this mug, which is the double-headed eagle of the Russian Federation and the double-headed eagle of Moscow. It's a different double-headed eagle. It looks east and west with the keen eye of the eagle. It sees everything that goes on. So we're able to give you all this granular analysis of election results, because we are able to observe these things so minutely with the assistance of people like Dylan, who's actually on the ground, person I mentioned earlier in the video. So 100% cotton. This is a short-sleeved t-shirt, really comfortable and great to wear. But we've also got polo shirts, we've got long-sleeved shirts, we've got v-necks, we've got hoodies, we've got hats, we've got stickers. All our products are amazingly good products. Everybody who has bought them has commented on the quality of these products, how well made they are. So have some of our competitors who've tried to copy them and failed dismally in trying to do so. So what's holding you back? Help the Duran, help yourself, go to our shop. Alex will tell you how to do it.
You'll find the link to the Duran shop in the description box down below, theduranshop.com. And Alexander, before we go, there's one question that I wanted to ask you on Trudeau. Looking at it from the outside, looking in, how would you rate Trudeau historically as a diplomat, as a geopolitical player? Objectively, how do you see him on the world stage?
He is no diplomat at all. He is absolutely not a diplomat. He has, of course, taken an extremely strong anti-Russian, anti-Chinese position, which of course mirrors precisely the kind of position you see the Democrats taking in the United States. So he's not a diplomat because these people don't do diplomacy. They do virtue signaling instead. It is inconceivable to imagine Trudeau and someone like Putin or Xi Jinping conducting negotiations. And how can you imagine Trudeau negotiating, as Putin is at the moment, for example, with President Erdogan of Turkey and finding solutions? These people do not believe in diplomacy. They oppose diplomacy. They are much more into virtue signaling and imposing Western values on countries that don't want them. In terms of Canada, its most important policy at the moment has been to support war in places like Ukraine, to sell arms to countries like Saudi Arabia. It is, in fact, in no conceivable sense, a diplomacy that I understand, or which Canada in the old days used to embody, in the days of people like Lester Pearson and Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau. I mean, that's all gone. And I don't really see it coming back from countries like Canada, actually, not in any immediate or short term. So what he represents is the new Western bloc, at least the new Anglo-American liberal Western bloc, which, it must be said, is being challenged from within by more conservative forces, like we've seen in Canada, and which is not very popular.
So you believe overall Trudeau's first term was a net negative as far as
I'm concerned,
Canada on the world stage?
It wasn't a net negative. It was a complete negative. I mean, a Canadian prestige around the world, and this is something I think people in Canada may not understand or realize, has fallen dramatically. I mean, what Trudeau has done is he's made Canada popular, or at least in some ways popular, with people like the Democrats in the United States, with some people, no doubt, in Britain. But overall, if you consider Canada as a force internationally, that has crashed.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.